adventure!
Women have been recognized in federal law enforcement as far back as the late 1800s and early 1900s. Take, for instance, in 1891, Florence Louise Hitchcock Birch, who was a deputy U.S. Marshal. In her memoirs, she writes, "My little pearl-handled revolver was given to me by the deputies one Christmas while I was working in the U.S. Marshal's office. I really was a deputy and held a commission the same as they did." Then there's Claire Marie Hodges. She became a Park Service Ranger during World War I when positions became available from men who were drafted into the Army. And there were other trailblazers in both federal and local law enforcement.
Like never before in history, America's women pitched into the fight. New York got female cops. Shortages had forced the ladies to give up their steel corsets, but they gained an iron determination.
The Prohibition years brought other women into the law. For example, Mabel Walker Willebrandt, sometimes known as the Lady of the Nightclub Raids, because of her aggressive prosecution of Prohibition cases. She was appointed Assistant Attorney General by President Warren Harding. She was largely responsible for establishing the Federal Bureau of Prisons and appointing its first female warden, Mary Bell Harris. When J. Edgar Hoover took over what is now known as the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1924, there were 2 female special agents on duty, both of who resigned shortly thereafter. A third woman, Lenore Houston, became an agent in 1924 and remained on duty until her resignation in 1928. When World War II broke out, women were still entering the ranks of law enforcement, to include state and local police departments.
Do you folks have? I'm glad to be able to appoint you. I want you to keep yourselves in good physical condition. You are all young. We don't want to see you take on weight.
It was also during World War II that the Secret Service police of the Treasury Department needed help, and women filled positions left vacant by men who had gone into war service. Additionally, the first court-appointed female U.S. Marshal, Catherine Battle Gordy, was serving in the Southern District of Alabama. And there were others, but women were still seen as novelties in an almost exclusively male profession. In a letter dated 1948 from 20th Century Fox to the U.S. Department of Agriculture regarding U.S. Forest Service fire lookouts, it states,
"We will not use a girl lookout. That despite the truth of their existence, the public would find them to be too bizarre."
In 1967, President Lyndon Johnson issued an executive order that added sex to the other prohibited forms of discrimination: race, color, religion, and national origin. But it wasn't until 1970 that the Executive Protective Service, now known as the Uniform Division of the Secret Service, hired its first policewoman. These women protected the White House, the President, and members of his family. In April 1971, U.S. Customs Service graduated its first female sky marshals. Soon after, in May 1971, the Civil Service Commission handed down a landmark decision. No longer could only men hold an agency position that required carrying a gun. The federal law enforcement agencies began hiring women for these roles.
Back in 1971, 1972, when women were first being accepted as law enforcement officers at the federal level, there were not very many women in certain types of assignments.
Women were not given travel assignments, primarily because the male postal inspectors' wives were not agreeable to their husbands traveling with women. And today that might sound a bit odd, but that was the case back then.
When I came on the job, there were only 12 women. And since that time, we're at about 10% of our strength. You see women represented in every facet of the job, technically, tactically, every area and aspect of the job.
We've gone from support roles in most of the agencies, doing kind of soft kind of work, I think, to the full range of law enforcement duties.
The first female special agents were hired in 1971 and 1972 by agencies such as U.S. Customs, U.S. Secret Service, U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, now known as the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
At the time I started with ATF, we actually were still under the Internal Revenue Service. We were a division of IRS for 2 whole weeks, so I had IRS credentials, and then 2 weeks later got ATF credentials. And I had several concerns before I started my position. My main fear was that I would be met with open hostility from my male colleagues. And I'm happy to report that with few exceptions, that never happened.
Other federal law enforcement agencies soon followed.
Well, first off, we were, I think, all scared to death because we didn't know exactly what we were getting ourselves into. Second of all, I don't think the patrol was ready for us either. So things were new for all of us.
Additionally, with the creation of the offices of Inspector General in 1978, opportunities for women to become criminal investigators again increased. Although women received many new opportunities never before known to them, the number of women entering federal law enforcement still remained low. The Office of Personnel Management responded to the crisis by creating a task force. It later came under sponsorship of the U.S. Departments of Treasury and Justice and was known as the Interagency Committee on Women in Federal Law Enforcement, or WIFLE.
And we did some very broad-based overviews, you know, how women were being recruited. It's pretty much the same thing as now. How are they being recruited? How are they being trained? What kind of projects were they put on? What types of investigations? And it is true that we looked at it from an 1811 criminal investigator perspective.
WIFLE has been an active voice for women in federal law enforcement. Its goals have been to enhance the recruitment, hiring, promotion, and retention of women in federal law enforcement occupations. It also recognized the bravery and accomplishments of law enforcement professionals through recognitions, awards, and scholarships. One award is named after Julie Y. Cross, the first female U.S. Secret Service agent killed in the line of duty.
I never met Julie Cross, but my heart goes out to her for being such a courageous person. Julie lost her life trying to solve a problem, and we as law enforcement officers daily are charged with that same responsibility.
Another award recognized a federal official who had contributed to the recruitment and advancement of women in federal law enforcement.
The Doris McCrossan Outstanding Managers Award is named in memory of a woman who was a pioneer on the Interagency Committee. She was the Federal Women's Program Manager at the Department of Justice, and she was an individual who felt strong in the principles of law enforcement and of making sure that the women had a place there.
In June 1999, Women in Federal Law Enforcement Incorporated, also known as WIFLE, was established as a nonprofit organization. Today, although still underrepresented, women work as law enforcement agents and officers in federal law enforcement agencies throughout the country. Most recent federal data compiled by the Bureau of Justice Statistics indicate that overall, in 1998, women accounted for 1 in every 7, or 14.2% of federal officers with arrest and firearm authority. Although the numbers may not be large, the contributions are many.
We're out here by ourselves. You don't know what's going to be around the corner. You don't know if it's going to be a dead bear, somebody taking a deer, or somebody raping a woman.
The challenges is what's going to make me a better person. It's going to make me stronger. I found that in most of the search warrants we've gone on, we've almost always been taken or seized computer evidence.
I enjoy what I do, and we do make a difference.
Not just as agents and officers. Women hold a range of positions in law enforcement, from high-level management positions to inspectors, intelligence analysts, bomb technicians, chemists and other forensic specialists, attorneys, computer specialists, and others. They play a vital role in preventing, solving, and prosecuting crimes. In the new millennium comes new goals, new ideas, and new dreams.
There's so many things in law enforcement today that weren't available to me when I was starting out. I think younger people in general have a much broader horizon to shoot for, actually, than we did.
The stereotypical barriers, or at least some of them, have been lifted, but certainly not all of them, and I do think that the best is yet to come.
There are tremendous opportunities for women to continue to prosper and to be the future leaders of law enforcement and to bring to the table the kind of diversity that helps the organizations grow and to become more excellent quality organizations.
Women are crossing the threshold to a new era. Federal law enforcement is opening new opportunities for all.
There is really nothing women cannot do in federal law enforcement, whether it's to be head of an agency, head of a field office, head of a laboratory, to be in charge of the most complex and important cases. Everything is available for women now.
Duties aren't looked at as a woman's duties or a male duty, just an agent duties. And people have equal opportunity to be excellent in everything that they do.
These are women in federal law enforcement, committed, dedicated, women of valor and vision.
You can do anything you really want to if it's the right thing to do and you put your mind to it and try your best.
We honor all of the women and men in law enforcement who have given their lives in the line of duty and dedicate this video to those who put their lives on the line every day to make our communities safer.
The women we've just seen, and many others like them, have forever changed the face of federal law enforcement. They entered the field when the only career paths they faced were winding back roads at best. Their trailblazing efforts have cleared the way for new generations of women to serve and to lead. Boundaries were tested and barriers broken. What emerged were new opportunities for individual women and an undeniable improvement to the quality and character of law enforcement. Moreover, by proving their value in this most demanding of professions, they've helped break down biases that limited opportunities for women in other fields as well. As a federal law enforcement bureau head who benefits every day from their work, and as the father of a daughter whose horizons they've expanded, I extend my most heartfelt thanks and appreciation to these women for their courage, their determination, and their pride. Their achievements are leading law enforcement successfully into the 21st century.